Welcome to Lesson 3, Awareness and Empowerment Through Mindfulness-Based Practices. In this lesson, we're going to continue to add to our resiliency skills by jumping into what has become a really popular topic in the research, in the popular press, as well as in religious contexts, and that is how to apply mindfulness as a way to cultivate well-being and do what matters most in life. I want to open up with a quote, and this quote is from the Dalai Lama, and it really captures the importance of mindfulness. And he said, "The motivations of man, because he sacrifices his health in order to make money, then he sacrifices money to recuperate his health, and then he is so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present, the result being that he does not live in the present nor the future. Rather, he lives as if he is never going to die, and then eventually he dies having never really lived." And this is one of the most perplexing things to the Dalai Lama, and really it captures how most people end up living mindlessly, which provides the context to cultivate mindfulness to live in a really meaningful, fulfilling, and resilient manner. One question to ask ourselves is, what is our natural tendency? And when we actually figure out what our natural tendency is, it gives reason for applying and integrating mindfulness-based practices into our lives. And the answer is, our natural tendency is to behave mindlessly or think in a mindless manner. And what I mean by that is we often behave on autopilot without really thinking. All it takes is us, for those of us who kind of commute to work in a car, that we actually after work hop into our car and we can drive all the way home, and we get to the front door and we realize and we forgot about the actual act of driving. We have no recollection of that. And that is because we were mindlessly driving. We were so stuck thinking about other things that we don't even actually recall the act of driving. We behaved on what we call on autopilot. And what we'll find in a little bit is that when we behave on autopilot, sometimes we don't do things that are in our best interests. They can be harmful to others and actually cause more stress on ourselves. We also have the tendency to believe as if all our thoughts and our feelings are telling the literal truth, that they're actual facts. The reality is that thoughts are just thoughts. They're not truths or facts. They're just really what George Carlin, who's a comedian, said, they're brain farts. They actually just pop up into our head. We don't have to do anything with a thought. But when we are mindless, we actually just believe every thought as if it's telling us the truth. And sometimes our thoughts can actually dominate and lead to regrettable or unwanted behaviors and feelings. Mindlessness also consists of reacting to situations more on your emotions or what you feel like doing, rather on rational, logical thinking, and that's grounded in what's most effective in the moment. So mindlessness consists of behaving in a reactive and emotional manner. Last, and perhaps most important, mindlessness is about being stuck in the past and future. You're not in the present moment. So we can worry so much about past things, or we can project and anticipate things into the future that we actually miss what's right in front of our faces because we're not connected and present in the moment that's unfolding in front of us. So I want to give some specific examples of what mindlessness looks like. And multitasking gives us a real example of how it works. So I want you to imagine that I got off of work and I drive home and I'm stuck thinking about the to-do list that I'm left with at work. Yet I'm about to step in through my front door and my wife and my daughter are waiting for me. So I step into my home and I'm thinking, man, I got to check my emails. Yet my daughter's there tugging at my pant leg, wanting my approval and attention. And my wife is just wanting a simple greeting, hello, honey, how are you? Yet all I can think about is the email. So I kind of walk past them. I sit my briefcase down and actually pull out my computer. These are the things when we are multitasking and in acting in a mindless manner, we can really miss what's most important to us and right in front of our faces and actually engage in behaviors that we later regret. So we're going to talk about the opposite of mindlessness in a little bit, and that is mindfulness and how we actually pay attention in the present moment to what's most important. Another way that mindlessness looks like is operating on autopilot and simply going through the motions. People are creatures of habit, and we have numerous routines that we go through. And so there's a tendency to actually simply go on autopilot without really paying attention to the present moment and observing what's happening in the here and now. And so what happens is when we just go on autopilot, we can actually engage in behaviors that don't actually help the situation, or we can really miss meaningful, fulfilling experiences that are right in front of our face. So we often have to challenge ourselves when we have specific routines or habits to cultivate and pay attention on purpose to the present moment so we don't miss opportunities to behave effectively in a way that's consistent with our values. And also pick up on things that add to the meaningfulness and fulfilling aspects of living. So we know that mindlessness isn't essentially the best way to operate. And the opposite of that is mindfulness. And mindfulness really gained some traction in the United States or in the Western world with the research by Jon Kabat-Zinn. And he was a researcher at the University of Maryland, and he developed a program called mindfulness-based stress reduction. And it was a program implemented in the hospital setting to help people with chronic illnesses and injuries deal with pain. And so he helped patients cultivate mindfulness in order to reduce pain and increase recovery time. And there's been numerous studies on the effectiveness of mindfulness-based stress reduction, and it really started to gain some popularity moving forward. But if we go back deep into history, there's a lot of foundations in Eastern thought, particularly Buddhism, that gave rise to mindfulness-based practices. The current way of thinking about mindfulness is actually outside of a religious context, that it's actually a human skill about how to control the mind. Many mindfulness-based practitioners actually argue that our brain is a monkey brain, and we have to learn how to tame our brain, because our brain, the way in which it operates and pays attention to things, like being stuck in past and future thinking or going on autopilot, actually can create more stress and suffering. So mindfulness is a process of actually taming the brain and paying attention to life in a certain way. Jon Kabat-Zinn provided kind of this definition, and he defined mindfulness as the awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose in the present moment with an element of openness to the unfolding of experiences moment by moment. Now that may seem a little bit wordy right now, but we're going to go ahead and unpack that definition so we have a firm understanding of what mindfulness is, and then ultimately what we can do to cultivate and practice it in our lives to benefit and become resilient. So if you're like me, you might be a little bit skeptical about the benefits of mindfulness-based practices because it seems kind of a little bit fluffy, it's a little bit ambiguous. But that's why researchers have really applied the scientific method to understanding the benefits of mindfulness-based practices. Richie Davidson from the University of Wisconsin has done some of the most profound research on the benefits of mindfulness-based practices. And what he did was compare brain images of people engaged in mindfulness-based practices to those who do not. And who better else than to study kind of the brains of Buddhist monks. And what he's been able to demonstrate through his research is actually the brain can build itself, meaning mindfulness-based practices exercise the brain in such way that it alters the structure and functioning of the brain so it operates in a healthier fashion. People are less stressed. They're more likely to engage in prefrontal cortex thinking. The brain actually can silence that stress response or activate the parasympathetic response, which is that relaxation response. There's been a tidal wave of research. From the year 1950 to 2000, there was a total of 7,000 articles, popular press type of publications on mindfulness. From the year 2000 to present time, there's been over 75,000 articles, popular press publications on mindfulness. So there's been really an explosion of interest in this topic. And the research on mindfulness has demonstrated a range of benefits, including better concentration and clarity in thinking, increased calmness, decreased stress and anxiety, more skillful responses to difficult situations, increased empathy and understanding of others, decreased pain in response to illness or injury, and enhanced physical health, and actually longer lifespans. So together, mindfulness impacts a range of social, emotional, and physical outcomes.